Good evening, everyone, and welcome live. It's the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. It's another round of sound. I'm Bob Pompeani, and we have a lot to get into. But, of course, on the eve of the Stanley Cup Finals, back-to-back appearances for the Penguins, and their fourth in the last decade. The #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Penguins and the Predators, and we'll devote a lot of this program to that matchup. Here's your panel left to right on your television screen. Guys are going to chirp it up tonight. We have Jason Mackey to the left, Penguins beat writer with the Post-Gazette. In the middle, Tim Benz from DKA Radio. And to the right, it is Will Graves with the Associated Press. So, guys, let's get right into this. Today we saw Patrick Hornquist. He remains a game-time decision. But if he should play, Jason, what happens to the lines? Where should he play and who comes out?
Well, it looks at this point like Jake Guentzel's going to be the odd man out, which is stunning. He still
stunning
is
right. Jeez.
I mean, today at line rushes, I mean, that's what we have to go on. And I do think Patrick Hornquist will play, by the way, judging with the progression that he's made and what he's doing in practice. I don't think there's any question there. But it looks like Guentzel's the odd man out. He rotated in once on the fourth line with Carl Hagelin, Patrick Hornquist, and Matt Cullen. He's been slumping lately, no goals in 8 games. And Guentzel's the type of player, too, that he's a speedy scorer. He's not going to really go down to the bottom 6 and do all that much. He's not big enough to do that. So at this point, I don't think it would be the worst thing for Jake Guentzel to watch a game from the press box a la Connor Sheary. But, you know, things could change tomorrow morning. At this point, though, that's what we're looking at, Guentzel.
Yeah, Jason, I agree with you. Well, I don't think it's stunning because of the reasons you just pointed out. I think Mike Sullivan has done this before with guys like Sheary, and he's going to try to pull the same trick with Guentzel. I don't think they have to, though. I think part of the reason why Guentzel struggled as much as he did against Ottawa was the matchup issue. I think he just got swallowed up by those Ottawa D-men, and it's not like he wasn't creating scoring chances and he wasn't in position for them. It's just that we learned that Mark Method is the greatest open field tackler since Mike Singletary, and he took him down to the ice on 4 or 5 occasions where he could have buried a goal. I think actually Guentzel has an opportunity to thrive in this series against the Predators. I'd make a move somewhere else, perhaps with Rowney, who might not be as effective chasing down some more speedy Nashville Predators as opposed to the Senators. Maybe Wilson for as good as he has been, but they got him up on the second line right now. Maybe put a Sheary back in the press box, but I'd keep Guentzel in the lineup.
I'm with you, Tim. I'd keep Guentzel in the lineup, too. I think he did have space and time at times to create against the Senators. He's going to have more space and more time, I think, against Nashville. Rowney, though, it's a tough one. I mean, the guy, look, we didn't know who he was. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he has 3 assists in Game 6 or Game 5 against the Predators. And Mike likes to keep guys that are hot. I'm sorry, against the Senators. Mike likes to keep guys that are hot in there. However, look, he's been an expert button pusher. So I really think he's, at this point, you're sort of splitting hairs. He's going to probably make a decision, and afterwards we're probably going, oh, yeah, that was the right call.
Tim, I want to ask you about what you think is the biggest thing each of these teams must do. When you look at Nashville, they have a tremendous blue line. Their goaltending has been good. You look at the Penguins, down the middle, they seem to have an advantage. So what do you think is the biggest thing you got to focus in on both of these teams?
I think the biggest thing for the Penguins is to play their brand of hockey better than the Predators played. In fact, I'll make that a two-way street. Whoever plays their own brand of hockey better than the other will win. And I think this is going to be a breath of fresh air for the Penguins. I think that they felt so stuffed up by the Senators. I think they were tired of getting run and hit after by the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Washington Capitals. You know, I got the tone in talking to Rust and Sheary, a couple other guys today, that you know, you can see the smile creeping on their face, just the thought of playing regular hockey again. And for as good as the Predators are at that, I think the Penguins are better. I really like this Nashville team. I thought they could do damage in the West if they got by Chicago. Didn't think they would, but they did. So for Predator fans who feel offended by this, don't. I love your team, but I still think the Penguins win in 5, maybe 6 tops.
I mean, for me, I think it's got to be, look, Penguins special teams have to be as good. I mean, to expect them to go 3 for 3 and then 1 for 1 is sort of, you know, a little asking for a little much. But I think if the refs are going to call this a little bit tighter, because it is going to be, I think it's going to be a little more open series. So the penalties are going to be a little more like, hey, I think the refs will be more on it. I think that's, if the Pens go 25 to 30% on the power play in this series, I think they win pretty easily. For the Preds, I think it's got to be the goaltending and the defense. I think they've got to find a way to shut down, 87 and 71. And they have, look, when they've done it to Kane and Taves, and the way they did it, I mean, they whooped Chicago's tail. It wasn't a fluke win. They are to be respected and feared. But it's got to be those top 4 defensive guys, and it's got to be Rene sort of stealing the series for him.
Nashville has done this all playoffs, too. It wasn't just Chicago, like Will said. They have shut down some serious scorers, and the Penguins cannot afford to have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin shut down. They've been excellent to this point thus far. For the Penguins, I would bring up something a little bit specific, but I think you're going to see it play out through the course of the series. Pekka Rinne, Nashville's goaltender, plays the puck maybe better than anybody else in the NHL. And if the Penguins aren't careful with how they dump it in, and that's something they had to do a lot against Ottawa, things could get ugly. Pekka Rinne basically takes the puck, plays it, starts the breakout on his own. And that can lead to a lot of possessions that just go one and done. It's not even one. You're just dumping the puck in and losing it. The Penguins have to be careful with that stuff.
Yeah, but his numbers career-wise have been awful against the Penguins. And I'd also advance this, for as good as he is, and he is really good, I don't know how anybody can be better than what Craig Anderson was against the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's not a better goalie than Pekka Rinne, but he played at an elite level, not just in wins, but in some of the losses, too, for crying out loud. So I have supreme confidence that the Penguins will be able to solve Rinne enough to get 4 victories before Nashville does.
You guys mentioned special teams as part of that last conversation. So, Jason Mackey, let me ask you about what you expect from the officials in this. They've come under scrutiny for a lot of what they've done or not done. What do you think? What kind of games should be called and will be called?
Good ones. Can we try that?
Yeah.
Officiate the rule book as it is constituted? I don't know.
In other words, don't
throwing
don't
out
come
something
out and
crazy.
say we're not going to influence the game, and then they don't call something that influences the game.
I thought the officiating in the Ottawa series was just abysmal on both sides. If I was a Senators fan, I'd be furious. If I was a Penguins fan, I'd be furious. I would like to see it improve, number one. I don't think it's going to. So to predict what the officiating is going to be, I can just say bad. That's about the only thing that I can expect.
Yeah, I want to agree with what Will said. I want to. I don't. I want to. Will, I hope you're right, that because it is more open ice, there is more pace, that the officials be more inclined to call obvious fouls as opposed to what the Senators did, which basically they turned themselves into the Detroit Pistons on skates. If everything is a foul, they can't call much because everything's a foul, and they just get lulled into a rhythm of, well, that's close enough, that's close enough. Maybe if it's more open ice and more pace, and actually the players reward the calls with power play goals, the referees will be more inclined to whistle stuff when they see it.
I mean, I think either consistently good or consistently bad would be fine. I mean, to me, it's just the problem. One of the biggest problems the league has in general, I'm sure we'll get into this later, is the line for what is and is not a penalty on a given day moves. It is a constantly moving target. The players don't even know. I mean, think about the Hainsey call in Game 6. I mean, that was just ridiculous. I mean, even like if Milbury's on TV saying it's a bad call against the Penguins, it's got to be atrocious, right? I would just like some sort of consistency. I don't even care if it has to be good. If they're going to say just, you know, let them play, boys, and they start tackling each other, maybe not great for the league, but as a coach, I could at least sort of know what to expect and what to tell my guys. And I don't think what you're going to get from period to period at this point.
Consistency is pretty easy. Butt ending and full Nelsoning should be penalties. I don't know how they're written in the book, but they should be penalties every time.
On that topic, when we come back, we're going to talk about something Jim Rutherford said today to the Hockey News, and he's not happy with the treatment of Sidney Crosby. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about where another Stanley Cup would rank guys like Crosby and Malkin, especially when you look at Taves and Kane. That's all coming back when we return right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. The #1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.